Spider-Man Far From Home is the final entry in Phase 3 of Marvel movies, but as we get ready to head into Phase 4, we can't help but notice that the villain roster is getting precariously low. We've even lost fan-favorite long-term villains like Loki and Thanos, and are left wondering who will take their places. Has Marvel left some hints that we could be seeing the return of a villain we thought was defeated long ago? There's many reasons why Avengers Endgame was a total game changer. The fact that the MCU exists is revolutionary in terms of film, and Endgame was the culmination of over 10 years of filmmaking by Marvel Studios. There have been many movie moments which have impacted the MCU as a whole, including the signing of the Sokovia Accords, the Battle of New York, and really, too many of them to name. But Endgame did more than just introduce time traveling via the quantum realm, the multiverse, and whatever else is going on with Bruce Banner and the Incredible Hulk these days. It also really shook up the cast of characters, to say the least. We lost longtime heroes Tony Stark and Natasha Romanoff to acts of heroic self-sacrifice, and we also said goodbye to Thanos, who had been lurking around the MCU since the first Avengers movie. It also seems like we've lost Loki for all intents and purposes, at least where the Marvel movies are concerned. Yes, watching him get throttled by Thanos was sad, but he's getting his own show now on the Disney Plus streaming service, so don't feel too bad for him. Anyway, things have certainly changed in the MCU, and that puts it into a precarious position as we head into Spider-Man Far From Home and beyond. In the Far From Home trailer, Peter Parker asks Nick Fury why he can't contact any of the adult heroes who aren't trying to enjoy the last moments of their youth. Fury claims superhuman stars Captain Marvel and Thor are too busy to step in, and we can assume other heroes are similarly indisposed. After all, as Captain Marvel pointed out in Endgame, there are a lot of other planets and people out there that need help outside of Earth. So when you consider that heroes like Guardians of the Galaxy, Thor, and Captain Marvel are likely off on other planets or in other far reaches of space, the list of available heroes is even smaller. Sorry, Peter, but it looks like you're going to have to take a working vacation. One of the things everyone loves so much about Spider-Man is that he's a relatable character. He's always trying to find the perfect work-life balance that will let him be a superhero and also get to class on time. Just think about how many of us struggle with that, despite not doing anything even remotely heroic during our spare time. Tony's inspiration for creating Ultron was because he wanted to make something that could protect the Earth in an event where he was unable to do so. The Battle of New York was an eye-opening event for him, and he finally realized what kind of threats are really out there. If you think about it, Ultron was kind of supposed to automate being a superhero. It wasn't that Tony didn't want to keep being Iron Man, he was just worried that he wouldn't be enough. After what he's seen, Peter might also be reconsidering what heroes are capable of. He and his allies were unable to stop the decimation the first time around, and undoing it cost several of them their lives. In Civil War and the beginning of Homecoming, it seemed like Peter felt invincible, but now he knows that isn't the case at all. There's nothing like fading away into dust in the arms of your mentor to put things into perspective. So Peter has the motivation of knowing just how bad things can get, and he wants to be free to live his own life and engage in more mundane activities. It definitely seems like automating heroics, even for a limited time, would be something appealing to Peter. He might not have the same resources as Tony Stark, but Peter is brilliant as well when it comes to inventing things. He might think that he could succeed where his mentor didn't, and alter Ultron to be what Tony and Bruce wanted him to be. You know, a being who was interested in protecting the Earth and protecting humans. As we mentioned, the MCU could definitely use some more people protecting it. Being low on heroes means it's the perfect time for the next major villain to make their appearance in the MCU. It's not like villains need things to be perfect in order to start their evil schemes, but it's definitely an incentive. Of course, there's no shortage of awesome evildoers in the Marvel lineup, but could they have been teasing the return of a villain that we've seen on the big screen before? In the prelude comic for the Captain Marvel movie, we got to see moments experienced by Nick Fury and Maria Hill in Avengers Age of Ultron. The comic book shows them evacuating from Sokovia when the Ultron drone crashes into their helicarrier. Thankfully, the pair were able to stop the drone, and Fury strikes it with a piece of scrap metal that causes the drone's eyes to flicker. If you've seen Captain Marvel, then you know it doesn't have anything to do with the movie Age of Ultron. So why include this in the prelude? You might think we're crazy to suggest this could be foreshadowing the return of Ultron to the MCU, but Marvel has done this kind of thing before. In the lead up to Avengers Infinity War, There was a prequel comic that showed the events of Captain America, the first Avenger. It involved Red Skull and showed a slightly different version of the movie's ending. When we saw the Red Skull grab the Tesseract on the big screen, it looked like he disintegrated. It left us wondering if he was gone, as in transported somewhere else, or gone as in torn apart into a million little pieces. Knowing Marvel, it could have been either, but in the comic books, it looked more like he shot up into the sky. This seemingly underlined the point that Red Skull was still alive and had been transported somewhere else. And as we all know, Red Skull surprisingly showed up in Infinity War, where it was revealed he was hanging out on Vormir guarding the Soul Stone. If the Infinity prequel comic foreshadowed the return of Red Skull, is it really so crazy to think the Captain Marvel comic could have foreshadowed the return of Ultron? We know Ultron didn't make an appearance in Captain Marvel or Avengers Endgame, and Marvel Studios has been pretty quiet when it comes to official announcements regarding Phase 4, but considering the fact that Captain Marvel made $1 billion, it's safe to say we haven't seen the last of Carol Danvers in the MCU. We might get a sequel to Captain Marvel, or she might return for one of the many other movies rumored to be released in the next couple of years. These include the introduction of the Young Avengers, the New Avengers, and Nova, all of whom could easily be tweaked to include the involvement of Carol Danvers. Of course, this begs the question of how Ultron could come back, since he looked pretty defeated the last time that we saw him. Unlike many other characters, whether or not Ultron was ever alive is subject to debate. After all, he was an artificial intelligence created by Tony Stark and Bruce Banner, so he doesn't follow the same rules as organic life forms. Bringing him back wouldn't require any kind of magic, time travel, or even a convenient plot hole or two. Like Vision, much of his existence hinged on the Mind Stone. In fact, there have been many who thought Vision might be able to return following Avengers Infinity War because of his unique nature. Sure, we saw him lose his life twice, but is there any reason to give up hope? After all, Shuri certainly seemed confident that it was possible to transfer Vision's consciousness to her computer and work around its dependence on the Mind Stone. Since Shuri is the most brilliant person in the MCU, we're going to go ahead and say we feel pretty confident in her abilities. If she says it's possible, yeah, we're going to agree with her. So we think that, given enough time, Shuri could have successfully saved Vision and removed the Mind Stone from being integral to his existence. Unfortunately, she ended up running out of time when the Black Order and Thanos' other minions invaded Wakanda. Shuri had tried to speed up the transfer process, but as far as we know, was not able to complete it. There was some hope that she had somehow managed to do so before the decimation, and that Vision would come back in Endgame, but that did not happen, and Vision was still definitely gone at the end of the movie. Does that mean none of Vision is left? Is it possible that Shuri was in fact able to transfer some aspect of Vision, no matter how small? Let's not forget the rather unique way Vision was created either. In Infinity War, Bruce Banner gives a brief rundown of all the various things that, when put together, make up the Vision we knew. Banner claims that Vision's mind is made up of Jarvis, the Mind Stone, Tony Stark, Bruce Banner, and Ultron. If Shuri thought it was possible to separate the Mind Stone from Vision, then does that mean the part of Ultron that's inside him could be separated out as well? If that's the case, then perhaps the aspect of Ultron stored inside Vision was able to make it into Shuri's technology before the process was interrupted. This seems like the kind of thing Shuri would have noticed and put a stop to, but she was one of the many victims of the decimation. If some part of Ultron was released from Vision, then it had 5 long years before Shuri returned. But why Ultron out of all the villains? Why would he be the one to return? Well, one idea is that there are plausible reasons that could explain his return. We know we have to suspend our disbelief somewhat when it comes to dealing with the MCU and its mystic arts and superpowered humans, but we can only suspend it so far. Out of all the villains that we've seen come and go, Ultron is one of the few who could make a reappearance that would actually be believable. Marvel Studios has no shortage of villains at their disposal, and there are so many in the comic books we haven't even scratched the surface yet. Since Disney acquired Fox, they now have access to the rogue galleries of the X-Men and the Fantastic Four, so why would they need to go fishing around in their recycling bin for a villain? When we look over the history of the MCU as a whole, it's easy to focus on all of the awesome moments, characters, and plot lines. Most of us get so excited thinking about great flicks like The Winter Soldier or Infinity War that we forget some of the less than stellar entries in the Marvel movie library. How many of us think about The Incredible Hulk or Thor: The Dark World when we hear MCU? Yeah, not many. It's the same thing with the villains of the MCU. We usually think of some villains like Loki, Thanos, Eric Killmonger, or Ego. It's not as often we think of Whiplash when we try to remember the bad guys of the MCU. So let's not forget that Marvel Studios has featured some real duds in their movies, and sometimes, when we do get a great villain, they don't last long. Now, just because a character is in a lot of movies doesn't make them good, but the nature of the MCU means that it's possible to have villains last across multiple movies and franchises. This helps us get to know them, it builds anticipation, and also allows for a bigger payoff. When you stack Age of Ultron up to the other movies in the Avengers franchise, it's easily the weakest entry. In fact, some people believe it's one of the weaker entries in the MCU overall. But let's not blame all of that on Ultron himself. He was actually a really awesome villain, and many fans believe he was underutilized in a subpar film. We actually saw him being kind of born in a weird robot way, and then, at the end of the movie, he was gone. He really just got started before he was taken down. Ultron was a ruthless, powerful, and unpredictable character who provided some interesting insights. After all, he wanted to get rid of all humans in order to save the world, and Thanos just wanted to get rid of half of them. It definitely seems like Ultron could be reintroduced and expanded to be an even more interesting and powerful character than he was previously. What do you think about the possibility of bringing Ultron back into the MCU? Are you glad to see him gone, or do you think he deserves another chance? Let us know what you think in the comments section, and then click on the subscribe button for more videos from us here at CBR. See you next time.